Well, welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm Pastor Roy, and today I am over in the parsonage in the library. And yes, Henry is here helping me out, bothering me as I get ready to talk. But today we are in Hebrews. We're in chapter 11. Today we're going to look at verses 4 to 7. Now, chapter 11 is it's all about faith. And today we're going to kind of go back in the Wayback Machine and talk about starting with Abel and Abel's faith, and he contrasts it. Doesn't really contrast it to Cain's faith, but we'll talk about that as we get to it. The interesting thing about this is this is for Monday. This video is for Monday, November 7th of 2022, and it happens to be Bessie Hendrick's birthday today. She is 115. She is the oldest person living in the United States of America, and I believe fourth in the world currently. And today we're going to be talking about Enoch. And Enoch, of course, is the father of Methuselah, the oldest man in the Bible. So that is just kind of a coincidence. We're talking about Enoch today on Bessie's birthday. But happy birthday to Bessie, and what a wonderful, wonderful thing. We're very blessed here in Lake City and at Woodlawn to have Bessie as a resident and a member of the church. So without further ado, let's get into Hebrews chapter 11. And let's look at verses 4 through 7. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he received approval as righteous. God bearing witness by accepting his gifts, he died, but through his faith he is still speaking. By faith, Enoch was taken up, so that he should not see death, and he was not found, because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was attested as having pleased God, and without faith it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, took heed and constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness which comes by faith. Okay, so today we're talking about the faith of Abel and Enoch and Noah. And they're somewhat different. Now, Abel, and here's Henry. Say hi, Henry. He's trying to eat my hands as I'm talking, so I'm going to bring my hands up higher so I'm not being inflicted with the pain of little Henry teeth. Abel's sacrifice, of course, was a blood sacrifice, as opposed to Cain's, which was a grain sacrifice. Now, oftentimes we get into saying, oh, that the superiority of the blood sacrifice. And that isn't said in the Bible. And it's not implied here at all. What's implied here is not about what it was, whether it was a blood sacrifice or a grain sacrifice. Throughout the history of the Jewish religion, the grain sacrifice were a quite acceptable sacrifice to be bringing to the temple. It's what is going on behind the offering that is the important part. Forgive me. It's the faith. It's what the attitude is that is coming with this offering he's bringing to God. Is it real? Is it genuine? Is it done out of a true heart for God? That's the point. Is his faith? Where is his faith? In God, or is he just going through the motions? And that's one of the things that we get accused of, perhaps as disciples. We do part of the Stone Campbell movement. We do communion every week, and some people don't like that. I know we've had at least one person that doesn't come to church anymore because he came from a different background, and he didn't like that we do communion every week. He thought it cheapened communion. And it could potentially, if our hearts are not in it, if we're not thinking about what really are we doing when we're taking this. And such is the thing with Abel and Cain. That's what I'm getting at. Abel brought it with the right heart, the right attitude, the right faith. That's the important. Because of his faith, his sacrifice was acceptable. But Cain's was not, because he didn't bring it in the same faith, or with faith, perhaps at all. He just did it out of routine, perhaps. All right. And because Abel died, he's saying his faith is still speaking, and that's what's going on. But through his faith, he is still speaking, even though he died at his brother's hand. His faith that was demonstrated in that story lives on. Enoch, there's not much about Enoch in the Old Testament in Genesis. He's the father of Methuselah, and he was taken up. because of his faith. There is a book called the Book of Enoch, and actually it's multiple books. I've not read it in its entirety. I've read through the Book of Enoch. My son Kreith did a pretty in-depth study of that when he was in college. He was a theology major, and so he did do a pretty in-depth study of that. So if you want to talk about Enoch, the Book of Enoch, talk to Kreith, not talk to Pastor Roy. But Enoch, we don't know much about him other than his faith, and because of his faith, God saved him from suffering a physical death. He was assumed into heaven. He's one of those few that was assumed into heaven. And Henry's back after me. All right, and then we get to the story of Noah, and the story of Noah is a very important story for many different reasons, and the story has multiple lessons that we can learn, but the story here, or what we get from the story here that we are to gain from the story, Henry, is that it's his faith. Even though he was in a place where there was no water there, it wasn't on a seashore or anything like that. He's in the middle of nowhere. And he starts building a boat. What is wrong with you? And of course, if you were to start building a boat in the middle of Iowa that was a boat for open waters, people would probably think, yeah, something's not quite right here. He's listening to voices in his head. But Noah knew that those voices were not just voices. That was God speaking to him. God was giving him directives. And the story here, the moral of the story here is that when God is telling us to do something, even though we may think it's impossible, that there's no way that's going to come to pass, God's moving us in a certain direction. Then we need to realize that through God all things are possible. And one of the more bizarre stories in my own background, my own history, is back when I was married to my first wife, the minister that actually did the service mentioned my ex-mother-in-law. I said, well, would Roy ever think about going into going to seminary and becoming a minister? And of course I laughed at that, she laughed at that, everybody laughed at that. God didn't. God knew where he was going to take me in due time, and perhaps I should have looked at that as a foreshadowing, but I did not. I did not have that insight. But God has long-term plans. The bottom moral of the story, the bottom line, and let us not doubt his plans. He will get us where we need to be if we have faith in him, and that's what the story of Noah is to believe in him. All right, that's what I've got for you today. I'm going to let you go. I'm recording this on Monday morning because we were up in Chatfield, Minnesota, seeing the Harp Twins this weekend, and we had a lot of driving and traveling, and I didn't have a chance to record this yesterday before it got too late. So I'm putting it up today. Have a blessed day, and please, please, please be a blessing to someone today. And if you are interested in coming to the concert on December 10th, just take a look at our Facebook page or go to Eventbrite, BRITE, and look for Harp Twins, and the concert will pop up on December 10th. All right, have a blessed day and be a blessing to someone today. Bye-bye all. I got to go play with Henry for a minute here.